Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hacks in the Wild by White Hack Labs. My name is David Harris, and I am a partner at White Hack Labs and an attorney in Miami. At present, cybersecurity remains a concern to most companies that handle private data. In this regard, we have noticed an increase in data breach incidents globally, and we wish to share with you some of the more notable cases. Let's take a look at a few data breaches that happened recently in the healthcare sector. The first recent healthcare data breach is Ascension hospitals. A ransomware attack has rendered multiple digital technology systems integral to the hospital's typical operations inaccessible. More than a week after the National Hospital System Ascension experienced a ransomware attack, disruptions to operations are still ongoing. An Ascension spokesperson confirmed that Ascension's electronic health record system has been affected, along with various systems utilized to order certain tests, procedures, and medications. Some phone capabilities have also been offline, and patients have been unable to access the software MyChart, which is a system patients can use to view their medical records and get in touch with their doctors. Unable to access those systems, hospital staff had to shift to manual and paper-based processes. Medications are taking longer to get to patients. Lab results are also taking longer to get back. A San Marcos woman filed a class action lawsuit against Ascension Health last week, accusing the organization of failing to protect patients' private medical data. The complaint claims Ascension failed to implement sufficient cybersecurity measures that would have stopped a foreseeable and preventable cyber attack. The second case to discuss is at Kaiser Permanente. Kaiser Permanente officials told its members on Friday that their private information was subject to an online data breach. The Oakland-based healthcare provider has nearly 13 million members nationwide and more than 9.3 million in California alone, implying that the breach may have possibly affected nearly 1 million former members. The Kaiser letter stated that on October 25, 2023, the healthcare provider determined that certain online technologies may have transmitted personal information to third-party vendors, Google, Microsoft Bing, and X, formerly Twitter. The online technologies were installed on Kaiser's websites and mobile applications and are commonly known as cookies or pixels, Kaiser said. The private information was made available when Kaiser members and patients accessed company websites or mobile applications, the company said. The information possibly involved was limited to IP addresses, names, and information that could indicate the individual was signed into a Kaiser Permanente account or service. The third case of a data breach happened at WebTPA. WebTPA is a Texas-based company that provides health insurance and benefit plans. Disclosed a data breach affecting almost 2.5 million people, some of whom had their social security numbers stolen. The information that was impacted may have included name, contact information, date of birth, date of death, social security number, and insurance information. WebTPA reported the breach to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services early this month on May 8th. In this report, WebTPA disclosed that the breach affected 2,429,000 individuals, and that the breach occurred on a network server. The next data breach case to discuss happened at MediSecure. MediSecure is a prescription exchange service, and MediSecure is the latest company to suffer a data breach. eScript provider MediSecure is the health organization at the center of the large-scale ransomware data breach. The company is a prescription exchange service which facilitates electronic prescribing and dispensing of prescriptions. In a statement, the company said it believed the incident originated from a third-party vendor. MediSecure said at the time it would remain in the market providing private prescriptions. It's unclear what data has been compromised and over what period of time. The last data breach case to talk about today is at Cencora. U.S. pharmaceutical giant Cencora says it is notifying affected individuals that their personal and highly sensitive medical information was stolen during a cyber attack and data breach earlier this year. Cencora said that the data from its systems includes patient names, their postal addresses and date of birth, as well as information about their health diagnosis and medications. The pharma giant said it had initially obtained patients' data through partnerships with the drug maker it works with in connection with its patient support programs. This includes patients at AbbVie, Acadia, Bayer, Novartis, Regeneron, and other companies. Cencora has not yet described the nature of the cyber attack, which began on February 21st of this year. The company handles around 20% of the pharmaceuticals sold and distributed throughout the United States. This is the latest security incident to hit the United States healthcare sector following a spate of cyber attacks in recent months. According to the public data breach notifications filed by Cencora with U.S. state authorities, Cencora has so far notified about 500,000 individuals since learning of the data breach. The number of individuals affected by the Cencora data breach is expected to be far higher. Cencora says on its website that it has served at least 18 million patients to date. Data breach damages. Let's talk about 4 types of data breach damages listed here at the top. The first is customer trust, then brand reputation, lawsuits, and legal fines. A question for the audience. Which breach damage type are you most concerned about? Thank you for answering the poll today that we are sending out now. Now we're here to discuss the featured topic, CVE 2024-23897. This is a flaw in Jenkins software. On this topic, I would like to introduce to you my colleague, cybersecurity researcher, Cameron Hassan. Welcome, Cameron.
Thanks, David, for inviting me today.
Thank you. Cameron will talk more about this vulnerability, and he will walk us through the exploitation on a sample Jenkins website. Thank you, Cameron.
Thanks, David. So today's featured topic for this webinar is CVE 2024-23897 vulnerability, which is a file read vulnerability discovered in a popular open source automation server called Jenkins. But before we start discussing this vulnerability and go over all these points, I would like to ask a question to our audience who's watching this webinar. So what is Jenkins normally used for by software development teams all over the world? I would like to raise this as a poll, so everyone, please feel free to answer it. Let me just raise this. All right, the question is live. In the meanwhile, let's do a quick Google search. Let me share my whole screen. Let's do a quick Google search to know about the popularity of Jenkins. So here you can see that according to the Jenkins website, there are over 1 million active Jenkins users and more than 200,000 active installations worldwide, with the platform handling 1 million jobs per day. And it is also stated here that it had about 44% of the global market share for CI/CD in 2023. So this gives us a good impression of how widely Jenkins is being used by software development teams all over the world. All right, so for those who were not able to answer the poll, so let's talk about what Jenkins is. Let me go to the official website. So Jenkins is an open source automation server widely used for building, testing, and deploying software applications. It basically facilitates continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines, commonly known as CI/CD pipelines. So Jenkins basically allows developers all over the world to automate various stages of the software development lifecycle by simplifying and streamlining different tasks and by providing a centralized platform for managing and monitoring these CI/CD pipelines. All right, let's get back to our point of discussion today, which is CVE-2024-23897 vulnerability that was recently discovered in this Jenkins server. So this vulnerability actually exploits a feature called expand add files in the args4j library used by Jenkins CLI to parse arguments of different commands. Here, if we look at the vulnerable code, we can see that this feature expanded files, here it is, replaces character followed by file paths in arguments with the content of those files. Here you can see if these lines of code just says that if we encounter any command that starts with symbol, then just the replace the file name as described after this symbol with the content of the file on the server on which the Jenkins is hosted. Right. While on the surface it might seem convenient, but it opens a huge security hole. One can argue how. So let's try to dissect a potential exploit vector here. Imagine an attacker crafts a malicious CLI command containing an symbol followed by the file path to a sensitive file on the Jenkins controller. For example, address.env file, which usually contains the secret environment variables, right? So what will happen when that command will be executed by the threat agent? So Jenkins will just parse that command with args4j, the library it uses to parse these commands. And when args4j will encounter the edit symbol, it will activate this expanded files feature right here. So without any authentication or access checks, Jenkins will blindly read the entire contents of the specified file and replace the edit symbol with the files data. So as a result, the the expanded data, potentially containing sensitive credentials or configuration secrets, will become accessible to the attacker through the CLI output. So, well, I know I've been talking a lot, and so let's just get our hands dirty by demonstrating the entire exploit to our audience with a proof of concept attack. And for that, we will first need to host an instance of Jenkins server on our local environment that is vulnerable to CVE-2024-23897 vulnerability that we have been discussing so far. So let me go to my terminal right here. Here you can see I already have a Docker container running the 2.44 version of Jenkins, which is vulnerable to this vulnerability, CVE-2024-23897. And if we go over to our port 8080 here, then on our local host, then we can see the web interface of our Jenkins server. Here it is. And let's get back to our terminal. Here you can also see when we set up Jenkins for the first time, it prints the default admin credentials and the file where these credentials are stored on the system. These are the default admin credentials, and it has stored this credential in this file, in this file, right, on the server where Jenkins is hosted. In our case, it's a Docker container running on our system, right? So let's try to log into the Jenkins admin panel using these credentials. Let's copy this. We will use admin as the username and and I will just paste the password here. Oops, my bad. All right, we might have to wait for Jenkins to start up again.
Cameron, while we're waiting, I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure, please go ahead.
So, do you know how long the vulnerability has been exploited in the wild on this Jenkins software that you're discussing today?
Yeah, so, well, there is no public, let me just copy and paste this password. Yeah, so back to our question. So, well, there is no publicly available information on exactly how long CVE-2024-23897, this vulnerability that we are discussing, was exploited in the wild. However, reports of exploitation attempts emerged shortly after the initial public release of the CVE back in January 2024. But we can surely get an idea by backtracking the patch commit code in Jenkins repository on GitHub. Because if you look at here, this is the patch commit in which they fix this vulnerable code, and they added some additional checks here to patch this vulnerability. So we can backtrack this, but overall we do know that all the versions, including 2.441 and all the other prior versions to that of Jenkins, are actually vulnerable to this vulnerability, CV 2024-23897.
While we're waiting, Cameron, I have a second question for you.
Yeah, sure, please.
So, once a hacker invades a company's server system, how difficult is it to purge or fix the damage caused by the hacking?
So David, the difficulty of cleaning up after a CV 2024-23987 exploit depends on what the hacker did after getting into our system, right? After what he did after he actually successfully exploited this vulnerability on our hosted in our organization's Jenkins server, right? If the hacker just snooped around, then we can simply upgrade our Jenkins server to a patch version. It's like someone speaking in your window and you just lock your window, right? However, if the attacker really messed up the server, then that will make the post-exploitation purge more complex, and which might involve performing forensics to determine the whole scope of the attack. And talking about the scope of the attack, we can even talk about the current attack surface of this exploit. If we go to this dashboard provided by non-profit security organization called Shadow Server right here, then we can see that as of last week, 23rd of May 2024 specifically, there are more than 10,000 active installations of unpatched Jenkins server in the United States alone. So this shows the potential attack surface of this vulnerability is too big to ignore for all security professionals. And that is the reason we actually chose this CV 2024-23897 as our featured topic for this webinar.
So, Cameron, one last question. If hackers are able to enter into the software, what types of files can they access?
So, firstly, if I would like to answer that question, we need to first understand what Jenkins basically is being used for in that organization. So, commonly, Jenkins is an automation server, right? So, it usually tries to orchestrate these jobs, mostly related to DevOps side of software development lifecycle. So once the attacker has actually exploited this, then they could have actually get access to the server itself where this Jenkins is hosted. And once they have that access, once they have that reversal, I actually have plans to show our audience a proof of concept attack in which we will actually be gaining a reversal from our target container, from a target system on which our Jenkins is hosted. In our case, we are using a Docker container to host it. So we will even go ahead and get a reversal. And once we get a reversal, we will have access to all files that are present on that system.
Could you
So we are actually good to go now. So we are also logged in to our Jenkins server. So let's go ahead and perform the proof of concept attack that we were discussing before this happened. So here you can see when we logged in, this is a fresh Jenkins server that has no jobs configured as of yet. Right? So this was just to demonstrate that everything seems to be working fine, and we have our target Jenkins server ready to get exploited for this proof of concept attack. So let's begin the exploitation of CVE 2024-23897. For that, we can craft a malicious command to pass on to our Jenkins CLI client. Here is the client. I have already downloaded this client in my downloads directory, but if you want to get it, you can actually download it by going to this link. The base link would be the link of your Jenkins server, and then this is the endpoint jnlp.jar slash jenkins cli.jar. So if I enter this, this will actually download the client. All right, so back to business. This is the command we have crafted. So it's an unauthenticated command since we don't have the authentication credentials yet as an exploit agent. Here you can see that the arguments we are passing, here's the argument. The argument we are passing here actually contains an @ symbol followed by the file path that we are interested in. And why are we interested in this file? Remember, Jenkins stores the default password of admin user in this file. Yeah, that's the reason of our for our interest in this file. We want to exploit this CVE 2024-23897 vulnerability to steal that default password. So let's go ahead and execute this Jenkins CLI command. All right, so this has printed us the content of that file right here. So now these credentials, we have got our admin user's credential. We know the username is by default is admin, and the password it has already printed us on a terminal. And we as an exploit agent, so what happens? So now these credentials offer endless opportunities to the threat agent. And since he can control the whole Jenkins server now, so let's see what we can do with these credentials. We can try to get a reversal from the Docker container, as I talked about uh, during answering your question. So we will try to get a reversal here in this proof of concept attack from the Docker container where this Jenkins server is hosted on here, right?
Cameron, I have another question for you. Could you explain
Yep.
to the audience what a reverse shell is?
Yeah. So reversal is basically uh, you will actually get access to the terminal of the other target system. And reversal, the specialty of reversal is basically you won't be sending data. The system, the server will actually be sending data to you. Not so that is the reason why it is called reversal. So the main focus would be to get a reversal to get access to the server here, right? For that, we can create a job to execute some commands on this Jenkins server. So I already have a job configuration XML file ready. Here it's called jobconfig.xml. So what will happen when Jenkins will run this job? It will execute these commands on the system. If you look at these commands, the first command is to print the working directory. Then it will create a file called pune in the same working directory. Then comes the interesting part. So the last command will actually give us the best reversal. Although I've encoded this command here into a base 64 string, but if we can just copy this string and go here, we can see what command it will be actually executing on the system. So here is the command. So it's the command is actually encoded into base 64 string. So this is the IP address of my computer, because in this proof of concept attack, I am acting as an exploit agent, right? So this will be the IP address of the exploit agent. So I can confirm it by going here. This is the same IP address. So I've used the same IP address here, right? So back to the terminal. All right, before we would like to run, we would like Jenkins to run this job, we would first need to set up a netcat listener on our attacker machine, so we can catch the reversal from our target system. Remember, I talked about the data will be the data will be sent from the target system uh, to our attacker's machine. So what we need to do here, we would have to set up a netcat listener on here. I would like to use netcat here for this purpose, and I will host this listener on port 4444 on my system, which is basically acting as an exploiter system, right? Exploiter's machine here. So let's go ahead. So it is now listening to me. Okay, perfect. Let's get back to our old terminal. So we have the job configuration XML file ready. What we can do, we can actually go ahead and copy these credentials that we found out by exploiting CVE 2024-23897. And we can use these admin credentials to actually create the job on the Jenkins server. So for that, we have this command. So I will just replace the credentials here. So it says use these credentials admin as a username and the password as we have just copied from the file above. And it will use the job config.xml file to create this job on the Jenkins server. This job will be named as execute systems command. Let's go ahead and enter it. All right, so this should have actually created the job on the Jenkins server for us. So now what we need to do, we need to ask Jenkins to trigger this job. So that it will run all these commands that we have specified here, right? All right, so for that, we can do a build command. Here's the build command. I will just replace the credentials here. And so what we are doing here is basically asking Jenkins to trigger this execute system command job that we have just created above here. So let's go ahead and execute this. All right, so let's see if we were able to catch the reversal. Okay, so I'm here on the terminal where I set up my netcat listener on port 444. And here you can see I was able to catch the reversal. Yeah, we have it. So now we have complete control of the system hosting this Jenkins server. In our case, it was the Docker container. And if I just list the directory, here you can see the file pune has been created as we specified in our job config, right here. Create this file and then give us the reversal. So it has created this file and it has given us the reversal. Now we have complete access to the system. So we can actually read any files that is present here. We can actually manipulate anything over the system here. So we have now successfully exploited the whole Jenkins server to 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 an extent where it has actually granted us a reversal from the server. So this is what CVE 2024-23897 can cost you if you are using Jenkins in your organization, especially an unpatched Jenkins server, right?
Thank
So this is what I wanted to show you guys here today. So let me know if you have any questions.
Cameron, thank you today for your demonstration in conducting real-time ethical hacking on the Jenkins website demo.
Thank you, David.
So what are the benefits of ethical hacking? Here we have 4 benefits of ethical hacking. The first is improved security. Ethical hackers can help organizations identify and address vulnerabilities in their systems and networks. This allows them to improve their overall security posture and protect sensitive data and assets. The second is compliance. Ethical hackers can help organizations comply with regulatory requirements and industry standards for data security, such as SOC 2, HIPAA, and PCI. The third is cost savings. By proactively identifying and addressing vulnerabilities, organizations can avoid the costly consequences of data breaches and reputational damage. Finally, identify overlooked vulnerabilities. Ethical hackers can identify and report vulnerabilities that traditional security measures may have overlooked. Now we have another question for the audience. What type of benefit would you consider most important? Thank you for answering our poll today. So what are the benefits of certification by using ethical hackers? Let's discuss 3 of the most common certifications. The first is PCI DSS compliance. PCI is a global security standard for organizations handling payment card data, aiming to protect cardholder information and reduce fraud. PCI penetration testing plays a pivotal role in achieving PCI compliance by helping organizations identify and remediate security vulnerabilities in their internal and external network and systems. With a proper penetration testing methodology in place, organizations can maintain PCI compliance and ensure the security of their cardholder data environment. The second compliance is SOC 2 compliance. SOC 2 is an acronym that stands for System and Organization Controls, and the controls refer to a series of standards that measure how well a given service organization regulates and conducts its information. Organizations that are managing data in the cloud need to be SOC 2 compliant. This will show their customers that they care about their data, and that in turn will bring in more customers. From data such as email addresses to sensitive financial information, users expect organizations to properly manage their data. SaaS providers with SOC 2 certification are more trusted clients than those who don't have it, because the certification shows a commitment to data security. Companies with plenty of data to handle will more likely choose SOC 2 compliant SaaS providers to work with. Finally, let's discuss HIPAA compliance. HIPAA compliance is part of a certification process required by operating healthcare companies. HIPAA compliance includes protections of electronic protected health information, or EFI, and protected health information is covered by the HIPAA security rule in addition to other HIPAA requirements. While HIPAA doesn't require you to affirmatively validate controls, it does require that healthcare organizations protect against reasonably anticipated hazards and threats, including hackers. So what is White Hat Labs and what do we do? White Hat Labs is an offensive security testing company. We discover security weaknesses before attackers do. We also help company managers, owners, and executives assess the risk of outside threats. We do this by providing red teaming and penetration testing that are essential in discovering how resilient your system is against cyber attacks by outside hackers. Our team works directly with your team using our extensive security expertise to help research, detect, fix, and ultimately resolve all cybersecurity issues. Our goal is to be an extension of your team to discover sources of risk, secure, and defend your organization. Overall, we give an X-ray into your organization's security posture. So what are the offensive security services provided by White Hat Labs? We offer two basic services. The first is a penetration test, also known as pen test, which involves a set of ethical hackers who are asked to perform security testing of an organization's IT infrastructure, including the hosts, applications, and networks, with no element of surprise. The second offensive security service available is a red teaming engagement, which goes one step further and appends social engineering with an element of surprise. The red team test aims to test the organization's threat detection and incident response abilities. A red team test replicates a cyber attack in real time, and your organization can assess its own ability to identify the threat and measures taken to remove the threat and minimize any damage. So are there any questions for the audience right now that I can answer? Please let me know.